Alright, for those who joining for the first time, my name is Kai Jun. I'm studying Econs and Finance and have been doing this out of passion. So share regards to my own financial journey and hopefully inspire others to kickstart theirs as well. So a disclaimer is that I'm not a financial advisor. So if you like to take further actions, do seek consultation from your respective financial advisor or do your own due diligence research. So what I'm trying to say is do take this more of like a informative session itself. Yeah, without further ado, let's start. So a little general update with regards to what's going on around the world is Fed rate is still maintaining at 0.25%. And what this means is actually what the government is trying to do is to actually spur the economy given the current pandemic situation as well as the unemployment rate in US particularly. However, despite that being said, so bankruptcy in US itself is, I won't say at an all-time high, but it's in the number is not going down either. So it reflects to a certain degree where I would say where the global situation is currently heading towards to, and I would say it's not really positive. Back at home, unemployment rate in Singapore is at about 3.5%, one of the highest among the 10 years period itself. So and on the other hand, we can see our GDP actually shrank annualized of up to 42.9% in the second quarter of 2020 itself. And from what I do understand and from what I've read up on is that we will be seeing our GDP still within a negative region in the upcoming quarters. So don't expect things to turn anytime soon, unfortunately. Okay, so a little recap with regards to the part one itself. This is a continuation. So the part one itself, I actually talk about the different approaches out there, the top-down as well as the bottom-up approach. Regardless which approach you use, it is still important to understand, I would say, in terms of conducting your own industry research itself. So the previous time I've actually talked about the cycles, the market cycles out there, business cycles, as well as the indicators, and as well as the type of efficiencies out there. But for this time around itself, this session itself, I'll focus mainly on industrial analysis itself. So it's important to, I would say, understand, and equally important as well to understand the economic outlook itself. Both are equally important before you actually decided to, dive down into a particular company within that industry in the economy itself. So let's look at, I would say, a more in-depth with regards to how we can have a general overview with regards to a particular industry or how we can actually start conducting our own research itself. So I will touch on impact on industry itself. One very simple, I would say, explanation that I will normally share with my friends is do identify whether they are sunset or sunrise industry. So what do I mean by sunset or sunrise? Sunset is more of like industry that is actually past their booming period and they're entering a phase whereby it's really declining in terms of the demand stuff. So one example is the oil and gas extraction. Whereas for sunrise industry, within the same energy sector itself, is actually industry that is, I would say, on the incline and it's growing in a sense. So one example is hydrogen fuel itself and how they actually, I would say, shape the future energy industry itself. Moving on will be policies and regulation. I've actually would like to talk about these two, monetary and fiscal policy. So for those who have studied econs, I think you all should know this, so just bear with me a little. For those who don't, monetary policies is basically central bank activities. Central bank is like your MAS, your Monetary Authority of Singapore, something like that. Yeah, I cannot exactly remember authority or authorization. Yeah. So basically, monetary policy is CB activities towards money supply within the economy itself. So one example that I can give is the printing of money by the Fed in the US. I think at this point of time, they have printed up to $3 trillion. Fiscal policy is government activities itself. One very good example is the raising of GST to 9% in Singapore. So these are the two different kind of policies that can actually can actually boost the economy or I would say control in a sense. So the last one will be the indicators that's out there. These are the additional indicators on top of what was shared on during the first session itself. It does give a good sensing of what the economy is like and how the industry currently is faring itself. So one example out of these few statements is unemployment. Unemployment could actually show a slow in demand thus reducing head cost lah, which is actually the result of unemployment and stuff like that lah. So the second indicator for another example could be the electrical output, within, I would say, industry. I would say maybe in a factory, for example. If let's say you do see electrical output decrease, you're able to see that actually they are not using as much as before in terms of generating the same kind of output. So you would, I would say, have some understanding that they are not producing as much because there is slower demand for it. So this is also one of the few indicators lah. Last one will be stock market. Reason why I put not recommended is because I think given the current situation, it's very obvious. Market is going up despite the recent crash last week in the tech space. Economy is not exactly very spectacular, but yeah, market is still trending upwards to a certain extent. So that's the reason why I'm saying that you should not take it off as a indicator, at least not of face value, but do reference from it to roughly gauge what's going on in the industry. For market versus economy wise, I will go a little bit more in depth in subsequent weeks, whereby I'll touch on econs and why is economic outlook important when you want to, I would say, start your investment journey itself. So a little basic overview with regards to market versus economy. The difference is that market is more forward looking. They tend to price in what's going to happen in the future or what they expect to see in the future. So for example, if they do feel confident with regards to the economy, they tend to price in the value like a little bit higher in a sense. They are generally public traded companies and they are the indicators of an industry, like I mentioned in the previous slides. But then do not just take it off face value do include other indicators as well when conducting your research. Economy itself is actually the measurement of past data, as well as both government, public and private companies itself. So they consist of these three main entities, as well as they are the reflection of the production and consumption and trade itself. So I'll touch a little bit more in regards to the economy portion and maybe a bit more regarding their differences in the subsequent session. So when conducting your research itself, right, there are many risk characteristics within a particular industry that you have to understand as well. So I've actually picked up these main four. Obviously, there's more. So I will talk about this main four for now. If you have any question, we can take it offline or we can just include it in the chat and we will get back to it at the end of this session. So for regulatory environment itself, what we're looking at is like your taxes, rules, laws or regulation imposed by the government itself on any form of particular business within the industry itself. So example of Singapore, or I would say I can give an example with regards to this. Why is Singapore so attractive to foreign companies? Because of our tax. Singapore tax is pretty low comparatively to other countries. It's roughly between 0 to 17%. To my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong. Second would be the barrier of entry. Barrier of entry, I mean, is pretty self-explanatory. Within an industry, is there any form of like major disruptor or is it very hard to enter into that particular industry? So when you want to look for, when you want to understand this particular company, is it easy to enter and stuff like that? I will combine an example together with profitability. So profitability wise, one very good example is like Singapore telecom industry itself. So the market is currently very competitive. There's, I think, four or five. Okay, there's about 5 telco in Singapore. And if let's say a 6th telco would enter, they have to compete with 5 others in a very small market of about 5 million plus population. So these are the kind of things that if as an investor, you wouldn't want to invest in this company because the profit margin is so low and they have to consistently fight among each other in order to gain the market share. So that's something for you to consider as well. Lastly, will be cost structure itself. What I mean by cost structure is like the exposure to fixed costs, such as like the infrastructure. One example on a local context in Singapore itself is our attractiveness to big tech companies to open data center in Singapore. So what I mean by that is like your Netflix, Google, Facebook, they like to open data center in Singapore is because first, we are politically stable. Generally, our security is pretty safe itself. Low crime doesn't mean no crime. And I would say our infrastructure to power the data center is pretty stable. There is no like sort of like a blackout kind of thing or like power outage or this kind of thing. It really happens in Singapore. So I would say is given all these other circumstances is pretty attractive for other companies to come in. So this is something that you can invest into. And I think from the very first webinar that I started, I have actually emphasized on data centers. So if you all look into data center that's Singapore, that's listed in Singapore, I think you are able to tell that it's actually doing very well now at this point in time. Yeah. So obviously I'm not saying that you should buy into it, but like do your own research and stuff. So analysis method is out there. I'll name the mainly three of them, Porter's 5 forces, which comprises of both bargaining power of both supplier and the buyers, threat of both new entrant as well as substitution itself. And the last one would be the industrial rivalry lah. So who is the major player, who's the leader, and who is not, and who is their competitor and stuff like Coke and Pepsi. So a little brief understanding with regards to all these methods itself. So when studying industry, we can use all these few methods. You can use all, you can just use one of them, but it's best if to use 2 or more, so that at least you get a more, I would say, a more efficient understanding of efficient analysis of the particular industry itself. So when studying this, let's look at like SWOT and PESTER itself. Is that SWOT focus mainly on the internal, whereas for PESTER they focus more on the external things, which is out of our control. So PESTER tends to focus on things like which is like a political, which is not within the industry control. Like they sets the tempo. Economy, social, and stuff like that is not, it can't be controlled by them as well. So this is what I mean by things that are out of their control itself. Where for SWOT you analyze mainly on the internal basis. So taking one notch down, taking it a step deeper, looking things from a very micro perspective, right? Is after understanding the particular industry, SWOT actually within the company itself actually helps to identify the position of the company in their particular industry. So what are their strengths and stuff like that as well. So it's more of like a macro tool. While as for Porter's 5 forces, when using it in such a case to identify a company, is actually more like a macro tool. More like a micro tool itself to actually make strategic decisions for the company and how they should proceed forward in the near future. So I'm going to give actually a very short example with regards to what me and my friend Nick has actually done during one of our programs that we have attended. Yeah, I have the permission to share this. So this is what we have actually done with regards to the information technology industry itself. We have a general overview. So within the industry, there's multiple sectors such as like your data centers, your cloud computing, your AI, artificial intelligence, your 5G network, your autonomous augmented technology and stuff like that, as well as like 3D printing and stuff. So we have actually focused on cloud computing and artificial intelligence as a whole. So yeah, so the content is pretty much basic, I would say. We talk about the macro outlook and the micro outlook itself, then what are the leading indicators and stuff like that. So I'll just scroll through to let you have a see with regards to how things are being done. If you have any question, you feel free to ask. We can take the question later. Then at the end of that, we'll do a SWOT analysis with regards to the strengths and I'll say the weakness and threats and like that. Then after we do a simple comparison with regards to what are the leading players within that particular industry. So what we did is we take Google, Amazon, and Alibaba. Then a general summary with regards to how the industry is faring and what's the potential that they have in terms of their future. So yeah, without further ado, I've actually come to the end of the industry research. If you all have any future have any question at this point in time, feel free to let me know. I'll actually put in the links to the first part as well as the link to our Telegram. So what our Telegram does is actually we share daily news as well as financial related articles. So you can just scan a QR code and you will join the group. Other than that, let me find the link and let me put it here. Yep, here you go. I have indicated a link in the chat. So if you have any questions, you all can ask now. If not, I would actually like to thank you guys for your time, for tuning in. I hope everything is concise and informative. Yeah. If not, I will see you guys next week, where I'll talk a little bit more about economics and the market itself. Bye.